Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you from wherever you are listening in from. It is your host Diego Ife, and you are listening to another upload of the Boom podcast. So, ticking off one of my to-do list items, right, is a reply video to Falcon's most recent stream on black male image. In terms of like how we feel about ourselves in terms of our looks and whether that might have an impact on our mating and dating prospects, right? Very interesting. I want to give a shout out to Falcon for putting it on and for those who contributed on the panel and even those that got involved in the comment section. It was really interesting being part of it. And it got me asking myself many questions, one of which was, am I ugly? Now, looks or the lack thereof are in the eye of the beholder. I think they're very relative. And me personally, I've never prided myself, or a key part of how I identify is not leading on, oh, I look good or whatever. I don't really care, to be honest. I think for a lot of men who are not necessarily the most, shall I say, conscious about their features, right? Hair loss might be something which might be an insecurity. I think that's entirely understandable and foreseeable. But outside of it, for me personally, for most of my life, I never really thought about it being something that's even remotely significant. I'll be honest, there's other things, whether it's sports, whether it's business, academics, life, deep thought, whatever it is that I would actually take amusement from, right? One of which was not being a sweet boy or looking at myself thinking, hey, you look so sexy. Never was about it, right? It's only when I got a bit older and I found out that, like, okay, for example, being dark skinned, or darker skinned, shall I say, is more of the, shall I say, in vogue, or the flavor, so to speak, right? Or being tall. I mean, I don't really feel tall, but I'm 6'1", thereabouts, right? So I didn't realize that, puts me among the taller men in the population, and, social media trends. Maybe it's even an evolutionary biological thing, but, I didn't realize that those things would give me. And also, I've always been pretty sporty, always been for the most part. So maybe, but for me, ultimately, a lot of these things are informed by popular culture. Popular culture is not static. It's almost like I don't know whether to say a continuum, but it's certainly not static. And sort of tastes and preferences, they shift, right? So yeah, for me, I think it's very relative. What I will say though, and what I did want to say actually, right, and it just came to my mind right now. I'm in my mid-30s, right? But I've got a very good memory, at least so I've been told. And I remember from early 90s on TV, right? There was this whole thing, especially among a lot of like black women in the so-called, let's say, black community, who really like lighter skinned men, right? The lighter, the better, like the fairer features, all that kind of stuff, discourse. And I'm not saying this applies to every single black woman, but it was certainly a considerable number back then, right? And they just, everyone's entitled to their preference. They preferred light skinned men. They were the ones that they would coo over and, lose their minds over, shall I say. But, yeah, I mean, I know black men, or darker skinned men, shall I say, did get love. They just weren't at the forefront of the black male, ideal aesthetic, right? And I noticed that I would say the turning point was probably The Best Man, right? The film with Morris Chestnut, Taye Diggs, who's the other one, Terrence Howard, and all the others, right? I think that one was that film was a very interesting one because I remember Terrence Howard was cast in like the role of like the Mac Daddy, like the Gallus, right? And I know back then a lot of the black women that I knew, even girls, because obviously I was like young, right? They really it was almost like when they were watching him, I was like, oh yeah, he's so fine, gushing over him, right? I noticed that, but at some point from that film onward, right, and leading into like films like, is it Baby something, the one with Tyrese, right? Tyrese, there was like a change, a paradigm shift, and more of a, you know, oh yeah, darker the berry, sweeter the juice, and that kind of thing just grew and grew and grew and grew, right? So again, I need to be clear, another disclaimer, I don't want anyone to take this personal, it's just an observational thing, right? Yeah, and so yeah, that's the only thing I would say, right? I would put it like this. I don't think that you're in quote you have to be the most aesthetic, almost like a muse kind of good looking guy to get you know, a woman or get women, you know, whatever your, you know, how would I put this, goals, or, you know, whatever outcomes you want from dating, right? I'm not necessarily saying that you have to be the best looking man, because there's men who may consider themselves to be average and they are, you know, their hands are somewhat full, right? So that I wouldn't say that that's necessary. I would say, in my opinion, that you maximize, you know, and again, I'm not a dating coach. It's just more so like my takeaway, like my thoughts, right? You maximize your looks. You know, you try to be as fit as you can. Try to get a regular exercise routine. The more you put in, the more you get out. As I'm sure many people can relate and probably attest to. Feed your mind. You know, open up yourself to challenges. Fail forward. Don't be afraid to fail at something, right? You fell forward at something which I've grown over the years to embrace, and I think has benefited me, and I believe it will continue to, and no reason why it can't benefit you, the listener, right? And to those who are already making use of that idea, kudos. To those, jump on it. You don't know what you're missing out on, right? So ultimately, one sort of trying to sort of chase purpose or die trying is the most important thing as a man, right? There's different measures of so-called manhood, right? Excuse the pun. I mean, like in terms of like this path of, you know, being a man, if you will, right? There's different ways. I don't think anybody should be essentialist on masculinity necessarily looking like one thing in particular, right? But there is a certain core. I think all men are sort of pretty much defined by their principles, right? What they basically stand for. And if one can tap into that and use that ultimately to really guide and navigate their purpose, which I am doing so in real time, mind you, right? Then I believe ultimately all of the things I said, the totality of that, the women, the attraction, it will automatically come with the territory, right? Can't be scarcity minded, but be balanced, right? Ultimately, chase, balance, or die trying. So I think I've said enough. Forgive me if what I've said may have not been the most, you know, sort of streamlined or very sort of smooth, but make of it what you will. Thank you for listening to me, and look out again for my next uploads. Take care. Peace.